Papal alert. Is Leo forcing for danger? What the Vatican doesn't want you to know about the new Pope. White smoke in the Vatican. Habemus Papam. The words echo across the planet, announcing a new leader for over 1 billion souls. Leo XIV, the first American Pope, emerges. TVs are firing off analyses. Is he conservative? Is he progressive? Will he follow Francis or restore tradition? A moderate profile, say the experts, capable of moving between factions. How convenient, how calculated. But here on the Gaia Ascension Channel, we have learned to look beyond the smoke, inside the locked rooms of the Conclave, to the real forces that move the pieces in this ancient game of spiritual and earthly power. Do you really believe that the choice of the most powerful man in the most influential religious institution in the world is just a matter of prayer and divine inspiration among cardinals? Or was what happened behind closed doors a brutal negotiation, a high-level geopolitical chess game, where secret agendas, pressure from world powers, and the future of the Vatican's own global influence were the real cards on the table? Forget the sugar-coated coverage of the mainstream media, with its commentators trying to fit the new Pope into outdated ideological boxes. Moderate. What a perfect word to hide what? A strategy to appease the increasingly divided faithful? An attempt to present a palatable face while the real changes are happening behind the scenes? Or is Leo XIV, Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost, an Augustinian with decades of experience in Peru, a hotbed of controversial liberation theology, and then, conveniently, head of the body that chooses all the world's bishops? The perfect pawn for a new kind of game. Who is this American Pope anyway? A man who has opposed gender ideology in Peruvian schools, criticizing it for creating genders that do not exist, but who also supports the radical environmentalist agenda of Pope Francis's encyclical Laudato Si, a cardinal created by Francis, indicating continuity, but whose positions on sexual morality seem to echo more conservative voices, slamming the media and popular culture for promoting lifestyles at odds with the gospel. Is this moderation or a perfectly calibrated smokescreen to confuse and neutralize both traditionalists and progressives while a much larger agenda unfolds? Make no mistake, the election of a pope is not an isolated event. It is a seismic movement with energetic political and social repercussions that extend across the planet. And at this crucial moment in human history, with the world on the brink of profound transformations, the choice of who sits on the throne of Peter is never a coincidence. What does this first American Pope really represent? An attempt by the Vatican to realign itself with the world's greatest power, a response to the growing evangelical churches in the Americas, or is there something even deeper, perhaps linked to the lineages of ancient knowledge that his Augustinian heritage suggests, or to the complex webs of influence woven during his long tenure in Latin America? In this video, we'll tear away the veil of moderation and investigate the hidden forces that may have really shaped Leo XIV's rise. We'll analyze the signs, the symbols, the connections, and the agendas that the mainstream media dare not touch. Brace yourself, because we're about to delve into a territory where faith meets power, spirituality collides with geopolitics, and the figure of a new pope may hold the key to understanding the next chapter in the great battle for human consciousness. The question isn't just whether he's conservative or lacrador. The question is, what is Leo XIV's real game, and what does his arrival mean for you? The Augustinian Enigma, deciphering the moderate pope between tradition and the global agenda. So, Leo XIV, Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost, an American from Chicago, a priest since 1982 with a long and significant tenure in Peru, where he even became a naturalized Peruvian citizen. An interesting detail, he is an Augustinian, a follower of the theological line of St. Augustine. For those who don't know, Augustine is a giant of Western thought, a philosopher of interiority and divine grace, but also a bishop who dealt with the complexities of power and the organization of the Church in a transforming world. Could this Augustinian heritage give us clues about Leo XIV's game? Augustine spoke of the city of God and the city of man. Is the new pope trying to build bridges between these two realities, or using Augustine's wisdom for a much more earthly strategy? The media quickly labeled him as moderate. But what does moderation mean in today's Vatican, a battlefield between traditionalist forces yearning for doctrinal restoration and progressive forces pushing for a radical adaptation to what they call the signs of the times, or, as some would say, to the globalist agenda. Leo XIV's trajectory is at the very least intriguing. Appointed Bishop of Chiclayo, Peru, by Pope Francis in 2014, and later in 2023, elevated to prefect of the Dicastery for Bishops, the body that advises the Pope on the selection of bishops worldwide, a position of colossal power and influence. Less than 2 years later, Cardinal and now Pope, a meteoric rise under Francis's wing, which for many would indicate a continuity of the previous pastoral line, perhaps with a different veneer. Indeed, Leo XIV has already praised Francis's evangelical authenticity. But here begin the apparent contradictions that make the label moderate seem more like a strategic fog. When it comes to sexual morality and the LGBTQIA+ agenda, the new Pope did not use his predecessor's evasive tone, that famous "Who am I?" to judge. On the contrary, as early as 2012, he stated that the media and popular culture foster sympathy for beliefs and practices at odds with the gospel, explicitly citing the homosexual lifestyle and alternative families. He also followed the Vatican's official line, before certain flexibilizations by Francis, against blessing same-sex unions, supporting the guidance that it would not be lawful to give ecclesiastical blessings to relationships involving sexual activity outside traditional marriage. And the most explosive, as a bishop in Peru, Leo XIV strongly opposed the inclusion of gender ideology in the public school curriculum, claiming that it seeks to create genders that do not exist. Strong, direct words that sound like music to conservative ears and like an alarm to progressives. Does this make him a hardline conservative? Hold on. The same figure who criticizes the woke agenda also supports Pope Francis's radical ecological vision, expressed in the encyclical Laudato Si. He seems favorable to strong actions against climate change, believing it is a phenomenon caused or influenced by humans. Here he aligns perfectly with global narratives and agendas that many view with suspicion, suspecting an instrumentalization of the environmental agenda for purposes of control and social re-engineering. So do we have a pope who defends traditional morals on gender and family issues, but embraces progressive environmentalism? Is this moderation or a sophisticated strategy to please both sides, or rather, to neutralize opposition while advancing key areas of a larger and less visible agenda? His experience in Peru, a country with a strong presence of liberation theology, a current that mixes Marxism with Christianity, and was viewed with great concern by previous popes like John Paul II and Benedict XVI, also adds a layer of complexity. Although there are no clear indications that he is a staunch adherent of this theology, his long experience in this environment certainly shaped his perspective on social issues and poverty. Is he seeking a third way, a kind of conscious capitalism, with strong social appeal, or are there deeper influences of this theology in his worldview? The puzzle of Leo XIV is fascinating. An American, Augustinian with deep Latin American experience, chosen under Francis's aegis, but with positions that seem to challenge important parts of his predecessor's legacy while endorsing others. Could this moderation actually be a chameleon-like, adaptable stance designed to navigate the turbulent waters of the Church and the current world, allowing certain long-term agendas to advance without the fierce resistance that an openly radical pope on either side would face? The moderate may be the most effective wolf in sheep's clothing, or the most astute shepherd guiding the flock along a very specific path, whose contours will only be revealed over time. This multifaceted profile of Leo XIV leaves us with more questions than answers, doesn't it? It's precisely this complexity that we want to explore here on the Ascension de Gaia channel, and we want to hear your intuition. Based on this initial information about the apparently contradictory positions of the new Pope Leo XIV, conservative morals versus progressive environmentalism, what do you think is the true agenda, or the main objective behind this moderate profile? Is it a genuine attempt at unity, a strategy of dissimulation, or something completely different? Share your boldest theory in the comments below. Let's decipher this enigma together, and if you're feeling that this way of investigating of looking behind the curtain and questioning official narratives is what your soul was seeking, then you're in the right place. Subscribe now to the Ascension Gaia channel and activate the bell so you don't miss any chapter of this and other deep investigations into the powers that shape our world. The truth is not on the surface, and we are here to dig deep with you. The Vatican on the global chessboard, the American Pope hidden agendas, and the new spiritual order. The rise of Leo XIV, the first American Pope, does not occur in a vacuum. The Vatican, despite its purely spiritual facade, has always been a powerful player on the global geopolitical chessboard. Its decisions, alignments, and the influence of its leaders have the power to shape not only the faith of billions, but also the course of nations and the direction of social and cultural movements across the planet. So, when a cardinal with Robert Prevost's profile is elevated to the throne of Peter, we must ask, what forces truly placed him there, and what are the expectations of these forces? The apparent moderation of Leo XIV, as we discussed, may be a facade for a much more complex strategy. In a polarized world, a leader who can present an acceptable face to different factions may be the perfect instrument to implement profound changes without raising immediate alarms. But what changes? And in service of whom? Prevost's closeness to Pope Francis and his appointment to key positions before his election suggest that he was a trusted man within the system, someone who understands the internal workings of Vatican, power, and perhaps the long-term agendas that are underway. Consider his American nationality. At a time of reconfiguration of global alliances, with the United States seeking to reaffirm its influence and new powers emerging, having an American at the helm of the Catholic Church is an event of immense significance. Could it be an attempt to strengthen ties between the Vatican and Washington, a way to use the Church's soft power to promote certain Western agendas on a global level? Or conversely, could it be an attempt to moderate or influence American politics itself from a Vatican perspective, especially in a country with a significant and politically active Catholic population? The mention of how the American Vice President, a Catholic, would deal with this new Pope is not trivial. The interactions between these two poles of power, the Holy See and the White House, will be crucial to observe. His Augustinian heritage also deserves a deeper look. St. Augustine, as we mentioned, was not only a theologian of grace and interiority, he was an architect of Western Christendom, and his work, The City of God, shaped the relationship between church and state for centuries. Could the choice of an Augustinian be a sign of a return to a more imperial vision of the Church, seeking to actively influence the city of men based on the principles of the city of God? Or more subtly, could it be the use of Augustine's deep psychology, his understanding of human nature, sin, grace, and will, as a tool for a new form of social and spiritual engineering on a global scale? Augustine understood the power of narratives and the formation of conscience. A pope with this intellectual foundation may be a much more sophisticated strategist than he appears, and we cannot ignore the possible influences of discrete forces and societies that have historically sought to influence or infiltrate the Vatican. From the Knights Templar and Rosicrucians to Freemasonry and other groups with esoteric or political agendas, the Holy See has always been a coveted target and a silent battlefield. A moderate pope, capable of navigating different currents without raising immediate suspicions, could be the ideal candidate for these forces that prefer to operate in the shadows, gradually implementing their agendas below the radar of public opinion and even much of the clergy. Leo XIV's positions on issues such as gender ideology, critical, and environmentalism, supportive, may not be contradictory, but rather parts of a larger and multifaceted strategy. He may be used to appease the more conservative wings on moral and behavioral issues, the culture war, while simultaneously advancing agendas that align with globalist agendas, such as certain aspects of the environmental movement or global governance that are presented under a veneer of common good or care for creation. It's a delicate balancing act, where apparent concessions in one area may serve to mask significant advances in another. The issue of liberation theology and his long stay in Peru also cannot be underestimated. Although he is not a declared proponent of this theology, immersion in this environment for decades has certainly left its mark. Liberation theology, with its emphasis on the preferential option for the poor and criticism of oppressive social structures, has often been accused of having affinities with Marxism and promoting an excessive politicization of faith. Could Leo XIV carry elements of this vision, perhaps repackaged in a more palatable form for the global stage, aiming for a social justice that, at its core, could lead to greater centralization of power and resources under the aegis of a supposedly neutral moral authority? What we are suggesting here is that the election of a pope like Leo XIV may be a sign that the Vatican is strategically repositioning itself on the grand world stage, not just as a religious force, but as a fundamental political and ideological actor in shaping the next phase of human civilization. His moderation may be the perfect camouflage for this maneuver. He may be the friendly and seemingly balanced face of a much more radical transition than we imagine, a transition that perhaps seeks a global new spiritual order, where traditional religions are gradually merged or adapted to serve a new paradigm of governance and collective consciousness, a paradigm whose true architects and beneficiaries may not be those who appear in the spotlight. The key to deciphering the enigma of Leo XIV will not be in his most obvious public speeches, but in the subtext of his actions, in the appointments he makes, in the subtle directions he imprints on the vast machinery of the Catholic Church, and in how his policies align, or not, with the major global agendas being implemented in our time. Vigilance and discernment have never been more necessary. Part 3, Finale. Decoding the Pontificate. Your conscience is the beacon in the age of manipulation. The white smoke has cleared, the name has been announced, and the world now watches Leo XIV, Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost, the American Augustinian with a complex past and a future yet to be written. But as we have seen on this investigative journey here on the Gaia Ascension Channel, the real story rarely lies on the surface, especially when it comes to an institution as ancient, powerful, and intrinsically linked to the machinations of global power as the Vatican. The apparent moderation, the seemingly contradictory positions, the intellectual heritage, and the strategic nationality, all of these may be much more than coincidence or simple personal traits. These may be carefully positioned pieces on a much larger chessboard, signaling a new phase in a game that transcends religion and enters the realms of geopolitics, social control, and the very direction of human consciousness. We do not have a crystal ball to predict exactly what Leo XIV's legacy will be, but when we connect the dots, his Augustinian background, his long immersion in the cauldron of liberation theology in Peru, his rise under Francis, his strong statements against gender ideology, juxtaposed with his support for the global environmental agenda, and the simple fact that he is the first American pope at a pivotal moment in history, a pattern of strategic complexity emerges. This does not appear to be a one-note pope, neither a simple continuator nor a radical restorer. He appears to be a sophisticated operator, perhaps a bridge builder between seemingly opposing worlds, or a transition agent tasked with steering the massive ship of the Catholic Church and its immense influence through the turbulent waters of a new era. The fundamental question each of us needs to ask ourselves is not whether Leo XIV will be good or bad, according to our ideological labels. The question is, in the service of what larger agenda will he, consciously or unconsciously, operate? Will his policies and pronouncements genuinely seek spiritual empowerment and the liberation of human consciousness? Or will they serve to reinforce new forms of control and conformity, perhaps under the guise of unity, social justice, or care for the planet? The answers will not come from official Vatican communiques or from superficial analysis by the corporate media. They will come from our own capacity for keen discernment, from our attention to the fine print, from our courage to question convenient narratives and to feel the energy behind words and actions. This is the call of the Gaia Ascension Channel, not to give you all the answers, but to arm you with the right questions and encourage you to seek your own truths. The era of blind faith and passive obedience to external authorities is coming to an end for those who are awakening. The new era demands individual responsibility for our own consciousness. It demands that we be beacons of light in a world that often seems dominated by shadows and manipulation. The power to decode what is really happening, whether in the Vatican or any other center of power, lies in your ability to connect with your inner wisdom, to search, to feel, and to trust your intuition. Leo XIV is now a central figure in this great planetary drama. Observe it, analyze it, but do not give away your power to think and feel. Remember the forces and agendas that have always sought to influence humanity. Remember the inherent power that resides within you, a power that no external institution can grant or take away unless you allow it. The true church, the true temple, is within your own heart, and true spiritual leadership is that which points you back to that inner source. We want this exploration to have been more than a simple analysis of a new pope. We want it to have been a catalyst for your own discernment and investigation. What have you felt along this journey? What connections have you made? What questions have arisen in your mind? Share your insights, your greatest suspicions, or your deepest hopes about this new pontificate and the future of global spirituality in the comments below. Your perspective is a valuable piece in this puzzle that we are putting together as a global community of truth seekers. And if you resonate with this approach of deep inquiry, of seeking truth beyond appearances, and of empowering individual consciousness, then Gaia's Ascension Channel is your home. Subscribe now if you haven't already, and turn on all notifications. Join us as we continue to unravel the mysteries of our time, expose hidden agendas, and celebrate the awakening of inner power. We are not alone on this journey. Together, we are the change we want to see in the world. Thank you for your attention, for your open mind, and for your courage to look beyond the veil. The future is not written in stone. It is being co-created in every moment by each of us. May your light shine brightly until the next revelation.